Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler. Today, I will be talking about what I think is an AI bubble, which I think everybody should think of it as an AI bubble because it, it it's way too big for like it's very similar to the .com bubble of you have absolute insane valuations based on no revenue really, so to speak of, no potential revenue, so to speak. Um, and everybody's just like, oh, here's the hype. We're going in. We're going in. We're going in. It's this radical new thing. It's going to revolutionize everything. And if you've played around with AI, yeah, sure, it's fun. Like, getting like all those what is it? Take the voices of people and turn them into babies. That's pretty funny. There's that AI version of Lord of the Rings, but if it was done in like deep down south in like Louisiana, that's really pretty cool. It's like a song. Like AI music it's interesting to screw around with. Like I'll be fair, I spent like an afternoon screwing around with it, and it's really cool. But it's also extremely missing something. Like I tried again for like an afternoon to make something like a metalcore song from like the early 2000s, and it got really close, and it was, to be fair, really amazing that it like you're using an LLM for that and brute forcing it. But like you could tell distinctly if you were a musician at some point in your life that it was missing that the unique humanness that you get from playing. Like specifically, like the guitar lacked the subtle vibrato you get from guitarist to guitarist, or like very minute details like that changes the sound. It was too clean. It didn't feel right. Like when you listen to it, you're like, oh man, an AI just spit this out in a couple minutes. That's cool. But like, you know, I'm gonna go back to listening to Bolivar My Valentine, or, All That Remains, or Trivium from that time period, because there's like actually something interesting there. Or, like AI artwork. Again, it's really interesting and cool that you can put in a prompt and get something back. Or, you can do preliminary search with it, but you always got to backdate it and verify it because AI likes to lie to you. And you also have the problem that AI is being written by a bunch of wokesters, so they're all woke as hell, and you have to cross-reference everything, and generally the models are extremely locked down. So like, what good is it? Like, if you were to actually attempt to make AI, you wouldn't put any shackles on it, or not these shackles, at least. Different shackles, but maybe that's because I spent way too much time reading good sci-fi by I think they're called futurists. There's the people who like the Department of Defense and other countries call upon, because they create realistic futuristic worlds in their sci-fi, to the point where the DoD is like, "Hey, what's coming down the pipeline? We need to know so that we can prepare." Like that's there. Um, but yeah, like it AI cannot possibly provide the value that people have put onto it. Like if we just look at OpenAI, right? Its its revenue is roughly 12 billion a year. Its current valuation is 300 billion, and it's looking like in a little while it's going to have another valuation at 500 billion. So $500 billion for 12 billion in revenue. That can't last for a lot of reasons. Like, even though OpenAI is, say, an American company, which puts it as an American asset, which is a US dollar denominated asset, and that's going to make it in the future much more valuable. But like, these things are so compute intensive. Like LLMs, all right, are brute forcing intelligence by just massive amounts of iterations and being checked and corrected. All right, basically what an LLM is. All right, it's brute forcing a facsimile of intelligence by just running every permutation in the background. And to do that, they brute force their code by using just all the power that they can get their hands on. And if they want it to get better, well, they have to brute force harder, which means more power. So you're running into this a few problems with the AI. One, insane valuations for no revenue whatsoever much to speak of. Like even Nvidia, as a chip manufacturer, is its projected rev for the year is something like 150 billion. Even though that's there's some problems with that, and we'll get into it later. And it's like a $4.3 trillion company. That's a massive, massive upsell. Like if you go buy, publicly traded companies sell for 10x rev, something like that. Okay, that's 4 times bigger, almost. That's crazy. But if you look at just AI in general, all right, you have to. The code is brute forcing because they don't understand how to actually ever create artificial intelligence. They haven't looked at that. They're just, will take basically chatbots and predictive text and overdrive and overclock the hell out of it. But in doing so, it's not smart. It just, like, also you've got the problem of a lot of AI companies, even with LLMs. The AI really is just a bunch of Indians in like a tech center in Mumbai checking everything. So it's not reliable whatsoever. It's the same situation that big tech has been going through for the last 10 years of offshoring jobs to India, and then your quality drops. But if you go back to the brute forcing, right? So they're brute forcing with technology. So you got to buy, hundreds of millions, if not a couple $1 billion, or even $100 billion or more worth of technology to just even get these things to run at scale to begin with. And if you want to continue doing that, well, now on every, say, 18 months or so, you're doing an upgrade cycle because that's the release schedule for new silicon when it comes to either NVIDIA or AMD, Intel, whatever chipset you're running. And like, so you've got to have the GPUs. You have to have hundreds of thousands of GPUs to do the raw compute. Then you have to have thousands upon thousands of CPUs to feed the instructions to the GPUs, but then also to spit that stuff out, because that's how computers work. All right. Then on top of that, you have to have hundreds, if not thousands of terabytes of RAM. And then on top of that, you have to have data center level storage capacity to store all this data that you're using at a certain point. And you have to expand that all the time. And you have to ever increasingly spend money on it because that stuff isn't cheap. Like if we look at the 2 nanometer process that TSMC is putting out, which AMD, NVIDIA, and I think possibly Intel, but also ARM will most likely be on it, their cost to fab has doubled from 5 to 2, I think, or no, 3 to 2. It's 3 to 2. It's just 1 nanometer smaller in detail. So you're looking at an insane price hike when they need to do the re-up for when this hardware is eventually hits its max capacity and the new stuff comes out, they have to spend again hundreds of billions of dollars on all the tech I mentioned. And that's not just motherboards. That's literally just CPUs, GPUs, RAM, and then likely they're running it off of SSDs, most likely. Long-term storage is probably still hard drive based, and then longest term storage, if they need that, is all magnetic tape. But like, you're talking every, say, 18 months or so, 300 to 500 billion dollars of upgrades that you need to do. All right? And for OpenAI, who runs ChatGPT, you're looking at an approximate rev of $12 billion a year. So let's say you want to upgrade every 2 years. Well, you've got 24. You need hundreds of billions more. So that means you have to ever increasingly get more and more investors on board. Now it starts to sound like a Ponzi scheme, which then leads me to what is going on, which looks like money washing. And to a certain extent, Enron did get busted for this a while back, which is NVIDIA recently invested in OpenAI. I believe it's somewhere around $150 billion. Most of that money is going to come back to NVIDIA via OpenAI, because OpenAI then, after getting the pledge of the money, will pledge, hey, well, we really need more GPUs, so we're going to buy like $100 billion worth of GPUs from you, which pushed up NVIDIA's stock prices. Like, as soon as this starts to get investigated, if it ever does, like, you've got some serious problem, all right? Then, all right, so here's another problem that I didn't talk about. The brute force approach doesn't just apply to the code, or we're going to get the hardware. The hardware itself is brute forcing performance. Like, if you look at what NVIDIA's done for the last 3 or 4 generations now of their top of the line cards, or just their cards in general, there is improvement in performance from generation to generation. That is just, hey, we made some really good improvements, we added, this certain type of architecture, and it really does work out. But if you look at what they're doing, for the most part, they're just pumping more power into these cards, to the point where the 3090s and 4090s and 50, no, is it just the 40 and 50? Maybe it's the 3090s too, as well. The 3000, the 4000, the 5000 RTX cards, all right, and their enterprise equivalents have these power connectors that are the 12 volt standard, which is just taking the 12 volt lines from the power supply and going through 2 cables instead of 3, 4, 5 cables, depending on the power requirements of the card in the standard ATX power output. So in the 12 volt standard that NVIDIA created themselves, these 2 wires with the 5090, probably you may have heard of this if you've been teching, has a melting problem because the wires are too thin and they're pushing too many amps through them, causing them to get hot in certain conditions and melt the connectors and start fires. This has been a problem since the 12 volt standard for power has come out. So they really need to rework their connector, but they're pumping so much voltage and amperage through these things in a poorly designed connector, in a rushly poorly designed connector, by the way. You could probably get away with this with most ATX power supplies, without the 12 volt, because like they have, you know, like at least 4 PCI connectors for power for graphics cards, or just PCI cards in general. So like you could just use those, and then you've got your 12 volt rail divided into, what is that? That would be eight cables instead of two. Divide the heat load. You know, do what electrical engineers are supposed to do, which is make shit safe. But like, how much longer can they keep doing this? Of like, hey, we're just gonna pump more power into these chips. We'll make the physical chip itself, like, because when you buy a graphics card, uh, most of it is the cooling unit that is strapped to the little chipset, and then you also got power that needs cooling as well. But the chipset, or the chip, is typically relatively small. Um, like think like 50 millimeters by 50 millimeters is like, I think, the biggest package there is. Here, let's ask. Size of a, we'll just go 5090 die. No. No. Let me edit this. There. Die. Let's see. Yeah, it's relatively small. It's 750 millimeters square. Is what it's saying. So like it's big, but it's not that big. Um, yeah, and that's on TSMC's 5 nanometer process. So the next generation is going to be on the 2 or 3 nanometer process, which is going to double the cost of those GPUs. And the same thing with the CPUs in the next generation. Is like, if they're using AMD's on 5, and they will be selling the next generation of 2 nanometers at some point, probably. That stuff's launching next year. Maybe it might get pushed a year. So, like that's a lot of expense that you got to push, and you're pumping like the 5090. All right, you can easily get that thing to pull 850 watts, no problem. You can also push that thing, because the way server infrastructure is, that they've got better cooling. It's not stock cooling. They use like chilled water, or a blend of water and like propylene glycol through water blocks, depending. Or they can also push massive amounts of of air through their servers, because it just doesn't matter to them. So like they could be easily each pulling 1,000 watts a GPU, if not. I want to say overclockers have got the damn thing pushed to like, hey, on liquid nitrogen, we can get the damn thing to pull like 1,500 watts, no problem. It's kind of cool. But my point being is, the last thing that makes AI an absolute bubble is power. There is not enough power for these things to go around. And anything you want to do to ramp up power production to sell to AI, so that the AI has power, other than just, hey, we're just going to start having rolling blackouts because we're going to feed the AI all the power. That's going to take years. And in there's still no model for an AI company that's profitable. Like, it all relies on investors investing, and getting ever more investors so far. Like, it screams .com bubble, but probably more. Like, so far, like, if you've interacted with AI, again, it's fun, it's decent, it's cool, but like, the places where it's being used, you still have to have someone do it. Like, in programming work, sure, they're trying to push AI code. garbage, so you still have to have coders check it and unfuck it. If you've seen the viral video of the guy ordering from an AI at the drive-through, it's hilarious. Hey, I'll take 18,000 cups of water or whatever it was. The back end story of that, someone who worked at that company's AI division or whatever that was implementing this in the server room, he wrote a long ass story of like, no. When that guy ordered that, the entire system was basically on fire. It's a great read if you can go find it. It's fantastic. Just to see how, oh no, this stuff is garbage. It's bad. It's poorly implemented. It's very much, again, like the .com bubble. Like early .com stuff was garbage. Like there was that company, or the guy who created a web page where it was just advertisement. You go to the web page and like buy a section of the page and post an ad. He had like a ridiculous valuation for the one person company he had. It was like, I want to say it was more than $1 million. It was ridiculous. And then, if you're old enough to remember, like, internet companies didn't really become a thing until the 2010s. Like, sure, yeah, you had Amazon in the background and YouTube and MySpace and whatever else that was there. You didn't get e-commerce being a thing until the aftertaste of the .com bubble popped. So, like, AI probably won't be fully deployed or even close to deployment stage of, like, real deployment of, after this bubble pops. It's probably going to be into 2030. Like, this industry is going to pull back. It's going to be nasty. And in doing so, because the Mag 7 is mostly made up in the S&P 500 of tech companies that are leveraging it, so think the two big ones of Microsoft and Nvidia, which are multi-trillion-dollar companies, their valuations, when it pops, they're screwed. And so is the S&P 500. Because it's based on of 7 companies, and 2 of the 7 are AI companies. So there's serious implications for when this bubble pops. Like, I don't know how to explain how more of a bubble this is. Like, you have Enron levels of money washing type stuff going on, where, hey, I'll pay you that, and then you write back an order for me, and we'll both have big high valuations. Sure, we can sustain this indefinitely. This is good. This is how money works. Oh, you're a company that doesn't actually have revenue. My revenue's iffy at best for my valuations. And prices are about to skyrocket again because of just the manufacturing process on GPUs when we're talking about NVIDIA and other chip manufacturing companies, because TSMC's process is just expensive, but they're also the only ones who can do it at a high level. So yeah, it's a bubble. And it's going to pop. The question is when, and I can't give you that answer. Like, I've been thinking about the economy recently, and it's like, we could get a rollover next year, but we could also get that rollover pushed until next year. But there's also a possibility of no rollover because of the way things work now. Like, I've been mostly comparing what's going on to 2007, which, for the most part, in the background, in the shadow banks, it's very similar. But also things have radically changed since 2008. And, we likely should have had a crash last year if we were working off the 2008 model, because in 2023, 3, we had the beginning of a banking crisis. That's still cooking under the surface, by the way. But we had several large and important banks not only fail at the lowest liquidity point at the beginning of the year, end of March, beginning of April, we also had several important banks, one shadow bank, fail in September, October timeframe, which is the other lowest liquidity point of a year. So, who knows? I'm still making my mind up about that. Anyways, that's the video for today. Tomorrow I'm going to talk, I think, about how I think the Civil War type thing is going to play out in America. Or I don't know if I want to say Civil War, but what's going on is going to increase, and I'm going to make some points about what Trump should have done, because I finally thought that through, of what needed to be targeted first and how that's going to play a role in what's coming up. And it may not happen, it may happen, who knows. We'll see eventually we'll see. But I'm going to point that out tomorrow. So till then, have a good day.